Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today with the opening of our brand new show, Abriendo Puertas TV con Claudia Vargas. I am honored to be here with my first guest, Dr. Kevin. Welcome, Dr. Kevin.
Welcome and good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for being here with us. Very excited and I'm honored that you're here as a guest to talk about um, how businesses in general can, using um, having the right information, they're able to grow. So, can you share a little bit more about what is it that you do to our audience?
Well, pretty much what I am is I'm a PhD in economics. And so I've spent well over 35 plus years in consulting with the business industry, from the largest to the smallest of businesses, and even startup companies. A lot of startup companies will look for somebody to kind of guide them through the process. What do I have to do? How do I have to go about doing it? And the fact is that most people really don't have a full understanding. The colleges really don't teach anything about business per se. And so you're pretty much on your own, and you have to find someone to mentor you to getting into the world of business. And I find there's a lot of people out there who don't have that kind of expertise. And since I'm certified in a multitude of different industries, I understand about cash flow management, and I understand that even when you start a business, you should be cash flowing from minute one all the way through. And so there's a lot of faults and a lot of things that I find a lot of business get themselves into. And this is why we have such a high failure ratio. I can tell you right now that 95% of all businesses within the first year are going to fail. And that's very alarming. And so my goal is to keep that from happening. And my goal also, when working with businesses, is turning people here in America the next millionaire.
That's amazing. And what are some ways that that when you see a business that is either starting or struggling, that you can help them out?
Well, I think a lot of times it's in the mindset. A lot of businesses go into business with the wrong kind of mindset. And really, if you're going to go into business, a business is a future. I think it's an investment. And as a matter of fact, it's probably more abundant that you understand that it's an investment that has more value than a 401k. So you're looking for that to be your retirement fund. And so that's why you go into business, is to create wealth in another area of consideration. And a lot of people go into business just because they want to help somebody. Well, stop and think for a second. For you to be able to help somebody, you got to have money. And so you got to create yourself a monetary system, and a system where you're creating money and you're keeping it as much as you can. So I call that cash flowing, because the goal really in working a business is to become a thing called a cash cow. Now, have you heard the term cash cow?
Well, I have heard it from you, but could you explain it to the
A
audience?
cash cow, basically, and how it's defined, and the way I define what a cash cow is when you have your cash and your cash equivalents exceed your total liabilities. So you're just cash rich. You may have a lot of other assets, and assets are really important to a business, because you really want to have your assets to exceed all your liabilities. But when you can have cash equivalents, now a cash equivalent is an asset that you can convert to cash, usually within, I'd say, 24 to 72 hours. And that's what you refer to as a cash equivalent. And when you can put those two together that exceed your total liabilities, now you become a very valuable business. And once we get businesses to that level, then at that point there, you start getting offers for your business. And a lot of times, the greater you are of a cash cow, the more that you can sell your business for. Because that's really is the optimum, is not to work for your entire life, is to get into a business, get out in 5 to 10 years, and be a multi-millionaire. And then you don't have to worry about working.
Right. That's the ultimate American dream for all of us,
Yes,
right?
yes. And then you can get into other business ventures and do other things. But I think that's important that people understand that if you're going to go into business, then go into business with the idea in mind that you're going to be creating wealth. It doesn't happen overnight, but you got to have patience. A business is like a family member. It grows just like a family member, so you got to pamper it. Yeah, you got to get it to be able to crawl before it walks, and then it's just got to walk before it runs. And that's basically how you have to handle a business, just like you would, like you just had a brand new born, and then you just have to grow it like you do a family member.
Right. So, what are some steps that they should take in the beginning or when they're even thinking about opening a business? What do you suggest they start doing?
Well, I think that one of the biggest mistakes that I find in the business sector is people go into a business they know nothing about. And so they'll do some research about that. But a lot of times, most people do have a skill set, probably from where they're working. And so wherever you've been working, you've developed a skill set, and that's where I think you should start looking at developing some kind of a business as an offshoot of where you've been working, or maybe you've been working for a company and you feel you could do a better job. And so once again, that's where I think we're the most successful people are really doing. A perfect example would be the construction industry. There's a lot of people who work in construction, have a lot of skills, but they don't like working for somebody else, and they like what they do, but they like to be able to do it on their own level, and that would be a perfect opportunity, provided that you know the inside track of how the construction company really works. Staffing companies are another area where a lot of people go on their own, develop their own companies, and it doesn't require any capital, and that you can start that up. All you need is people, and to me, people is a very valuable asset. So if you know how to manage people, you can take any service business and you can do a fantastic job. I like service businesses. The United States is now moving more towards service-based businesses, and those are the easiest to fund, and those are the easiest kind of businesses that you can get into and not have to worry about going into debt.
Right. That's really good information because now, that we're all beginning the year 2020, a lot of people are like thinking, I really want to start this year opening my business. I think this is the year for me. And it's really important for them to know that there are ways for you to get to the millions.
That's correct. That's correct. And once again, this is a hot economy. I mean, we can't argue and debate the fact that this is a hot economy. And so I'm telling people that, our current, administration right now is saying to everybody, it's okay to start a business. It's okay to take your business and grow and expand to unlimited amount of ways of being able to do that.
Okay.
And so once again, I really do encourage people, if you're looking to get into business, you're never going to have a better time than it is right now, because we're starting to see a wealth transformation going on here in the United States. Just 2 years ago in 2018, we created over 730,000 millionaires in America.
Wow.
It's the first time in the history that a country has ever done that. And as a matter of fact, we created more millionaires in 2018 than the rest of the world did. And it was a record-breaking year, and we're looking at maybe 2019 might even do better than that. So, creating wealth, there's nothing wrong with that, because a lot of people have created themselves a really good retirement fund. And there's nothing wrong if you had a 401k and whatever, and it gets to be worth $1 million plus. You've done good. But having a business and having the business worth $1 million or $2 to $3 to $5 million, that's better yet, because once again, you can sell that if you're a cash cow much often for 1.5 to 2 to almost as much as 5 times your gross sales. So to be able to sell your business, above gross, you have to be a cash cow.
Perfect. And what are other examples of some businesses that have been successful or that you have helped, just so that audience can get an idea, if they're listening and they could be one of our listeners that it could actually become the next millionaire. So
Right.
give us some examples.
Right now, one of the biggest growth industries right now is in the staffing industry. People who have knowledge in staffing and they want to decide to leave and go on their own because they understand the ins and out of staffing. Right now, the staffing industry is growing at about a 20 to 25% pace. And but once again, they have to have the right monetary backing to be able to do that because they are a service-based business. And we'll get a little bit into funding of what a business should be looking at when it comes to funding. But the fact is, I think right now, I think if you're looking for a kind of a business, staffing's it's a pretty good industry. The construction industry is yet to see its boom. It's going to see a boom like it's never seen before. The current administration has budgeted for the year 2021 $1 trillion for construction for the United States. We're going to really attack our infrastructure. So if you're in the construction industry, this would be the year to get in and to position yourself to be able to do that kind of stuff. And so that's another industry. Any service businesses like security. The security industry right now is high in demand. So you can provide security guards, whether they're armed and unarmed, or be able to put in security systems that can protect your house and protect things. Those are high in demand right now. And a lot of businesses are looking for security programs because we're all security conscious. We have to understand that's a reality. So I'm looking at the service sector is one of the areas. It's probably people are being told it's the hardest to get funding, but relatively it really is the easiest if you go for the right kind of money and know where the money is at. And that's my area of expertise, is introducing people to the right kind of money that doesn't create debt. You don't have to give up collateral, specifically put your house up for collateral, and your credit scores don't matter. And the fact is that the money that you can get is relatively inexpensive. And a lot of people just don't know that this kind of money exists. So they go out and do other things and create a lot of high risk for themselves. And really, if you're going to get into investments, your business, as we talked about, is an investment. So you want to limit or minimize the risk of going into business and minimize your investment because you're putting your money and you're putting your time into the business. And to me, that's valuable.
So give us some examples when you say high risk. What are some things that a business can get into a high risk? So,
Okay, well, some of the avenues, and that's a good question, Claudia, and I'm glad you put it that way, because the number one thing that everybody does when they want to get into business is they're looking for money, and they're looking to get a bank loan. Now, most startup businesses, they have a very difficult time because they are a startup, so the odds are most financial institutions will not fund a startup business. And so when you go into banking, people don't understand. Even if you're an existing business, banking is very, very high risk because you don't have control. So when you go in and get in a line of credit, that's basically what it's called. Most banks require that you have to put up collateral. And usually 1% of that collateral is going to be personal collateral. So they want you to put up your house, stocks and bonds, things that they can encumber and take. And in case you fail on your bank loan, then they seize the asset and they can sell it off to make sure they recover their money. Now, here is the high risk and the super high risk that's involved. Most business owners don't know that when you go out and get a bank loan and you got to put up a personal guarantee, your corporate seal now becomes diminished and you cannot hide behind your corporate seal whenever you bring personal assets into a business. So when I go in and I look at the businesses, I look to ask, okay, do you have any personal assets that you're bringing in? A lot of people will use their personal cars, their personal phones. They bring in a lot of other personal stuff. And then when I look on the liabilities on the balance sheet, I see this LOC, which is a line of credit. And after that, we'll name the bank. And I'll ask them, okay, you got a line of credit. It looks like you have a $100,000 line of credit. And what kind of personal collateral did you have to put up to get that loan? And the very first thing they'll tell me, it's their house. And I says, you realize by having all these personal assets into a bank loan, you don't have a corporate seal to hide behind. So if something did happen, you got sued, a good attorney will see that, and that attorney will come in, and then he'll go after your personal assets. So not only does he sue the company, but he sues to take your house, he sues to take your spouse's future income and anything else that's going on in that home, and they can totally wipe you off the face of the earth. So that's very, very dangerous, and as far as I'm concerned, very, very high risk.
Right, and it's incredible that businesses sometimes just go not knowing all this information and thinking, just I want to get the loan, I'll just put my house, but they really are, if they're not aware of these problems that can arise later.
Right.
And economies do change sometimes, so it's very good that they're aware of the mistakes that can happen in the future.
Right.
So,
and once again, and if you like to, people can go on YouTube and you can research a billionaire by the name of Mark Cuban. And Mark Cuban is on Shark Tank. So he's one of the celebrities that's on Shark Tank. And he tells businesses, specifically for startups, you have to be totally insane to want to go into debt to start up a business. And even if you're fairly new in the business, he also tells them the same thing. It's very high risk. And that, small businesses have a very difficult time surviving. So why put yourself at high risk and put your house in jeopardy and possibly, put your family in jeopardy by starting up a business? So I tell a lot of people, and I'll ask that question because I go to a lot of these incubators and these kind of like Shark Tank programs. And that's one of the questions I quite regularly ask is the fact is, why do you look for money to start your business up? And so they start giving me all the reasons why they're going to fail.
right.
So
And normally, what are the reasons? So, what are a few of the reasons that you hear?
well, I think what happens is they watch TV too much, and they do watch Shark Tank, and the people in Shark Tank, that's not real TV. That's for show. But the behind the scenes is what we don't know about. And I know what happens behind the scenes. And a lot of times, a lot of these people are not they just do it for show, but they don't really need the money. They're just trying to do things. But I know that Mark Cuban, he talks a lot that he finds there's other ways of being able to get funding where they don't have to create a debt. They don't have to go into any kind of risk because that is the second avenue that people can't get bank loans, so they start looking for investors.
Okay.
And investors are in business to own. So they're not there to be bleeding hearts. What they want to do is they're going to give you money, and if they decide to give you money, they want a good hunk of your company. And it's not like 10, 15, or 20%. They want 60, 70, 75, 80% of your company. And the fact is even though if the company does succeed, they own it. So you basically are an employee of of an investor. So
Mhm.
investors, when they get into something, they're looking into it for the short haul, and they're looking to make big bucks real quick. That's why they're
Mhm.
multi-millionaires, is because they're not dumb. They see something and they know they can take it, and they structure the deals where the thing really succeeds. They're the ones who are taking over the business. They can sell it outright, and they'll make it into a cash cow. And the fact is, they can sell it for 3, 4, 5 times its gross, and they walk away with most of the money, and you practically get nothing, and you're back at square one trying something all over again.
Wow, wow, that's yeah, that is exactly why it's important that people learn their options.
Right.
Yeah. And so for our viewers, what are other options that they can do in their businesses so that they can grow into these cash cows?
Right. Well, that's a good question, and that's where I like to be able to guide people into, is into an avenue called asset-based financing. Now, asset is ASSET, based financing, and that is a no-debt solution, and that's basically structured for most businesses that create receivables. And there's a lot of them out there. As a matter of fact, as of the first of this year, there is right now currently $95 trillion of outstanding receivables just for businesses in the United States. So these are companies that do business with other companies, and so they're asked to be a banker. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to give terms. So people are waiting 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, maybe as long as 90 to 120 days. So if you're that kind of business, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's very uncomfortable because someone else is playing with your money. And you don't have to have that happen. So there's this concept called asset-based financing. And what you do is you sell your receivables to a legitimate company. And what they do is they'll buy your receivables so you immediately have cash flow to work with. And so instead of waiting that 30 to 45 or 90-day period, within 24 hours, you can get your money right away and start working with it so you can
Mm-hmm.
grow and expand. And there's
Mm-hmm.
companies out there who can give almost unlimited lines of funds. I've had companies, a perfect example. I had a company about 3 years ago, and the guy was a retired police chief down in northern Kentucky. And he was going to use his pension. In Kentucky, and because of that, he found out that his pension was broke. He
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a dime in his pocket, and he wanted to start this security company. And so I got this phone call from him, and he wanted to know, did I have investors and things like that? And I told him, you don't need investors.
Mm-hmm.
What I can do is introduce you to a really good asset-based financing who specializes in helping people to start up in the security industry. Well, to make a long story short, in 3 years' time, he took his company from zero to over, $700,000 per month in gross sales. So he became almost an $8 million company,
Wow.
and in 3 years' time. And he didn't take on any bad clients because every time he had everything done, the funding company did all the credit checks for him. If there was a bad company who was very late in making payments, they
Mm-hmm.
told him, we don't recommend taking them on because they're going to be out 120 to 150 days. You don't need those kinds of clients. So
Right.
he avoided taking on bad credit accounts. He took on nothing but good credit accounts. Soon as he created receivable, within 24 hours, they wire transfer money, about 90% right into his bank account immediately. And then the 10% got put on reserve until the client paid the receivable. And bingo, he got the rest of his money minus a small fee. And so he really liked that. So he was able to go out and grow and expand. And he grew and expanded in 4 different states.
Wow.
And so what happened was, after a little past 3 years, one of his competitions noticed that this guy was really growing and taking away business from them. And so what happened was they came in and made him an offer, and they offered him almost $12 million for his business,
Incredible.
about 1.5 times his gross, because he was a cash cow. And his cash cow equivalent was about 1.5 cash to total liabilities.
Right.
So they came in and they made it, and the guy says, I'll cut you a check right now for $12 million if you're willing to sell me your business. He talked to his attorneys, they went back and forth, and they ended up selling his business for $12 million. So in a
Wow.
little over 3 years' time, you don't think that's a success story?
Definitely.
And him and his wife are now retiring for the rest of their life, and he doesn't have to worry about working.
Yes, that's amazing. And that's exactly what we hope our audience gets to feel inspired that there are better options. And a lot of people, might say, well, they might take a big chunk of, if I use that option. So they're kind of like fearful. Some people might say, some of our people in our audience will say, well, maybe it's a huge percentage. Could you explain a little bit, um, the options that they have and why they should do it, and not be closed-minded that, oh, they're going to take a little percentage, from getting the money in advance, and that because they're making that wrong decision, they're not going after their dreams and growing and becoming a cash cow.
Right. So once again, you got to stop to look at the cost of money. And that's where I think a lot of people don't sit down and I don't think it's been fully explained what the real cost of money is. And we like to refer to the cost of money is pretty much as the usage or the employment of money. When you employ somebody, you pay them so much per hour. Well, it's exactly the same way. You got to understand about money and how to employ money. And so what happens is when you go out and get a bank loan, right now, the prime rate, if people don't know what the prime is at right now, it's at 5%. So at 5%, what happens is a lot of people are paying at 5%, and the banks right now are going prime plus 3. So now you're getting money at 8%. So if you're going to use the money, it's going to cost you 8% at least. If you got good credit scores, and your credit scores really matter when you're going through bank lines. Also, investors look at your credit scores because they want to see if you're creditworthy and you're worth the investment, even though they are going to own the vast majority, but they're going to look at that as well. But when it comes to asset-based financing, that your credit scores don't matter. What matters is the credit scores of the clients you're doing business with.
Wow.
They look at their credit worthiness. So you can take your business and grow and expand your business and develop a good business credit score off the coattails of good credit score companies.
Wow.
And see, this is what I really like about this. But in essence, when you're dealing with investors, they take 60, 70, 80% of your company. That's a pretty steep interest rate
Right.
of giving away your company. Where in asset-based funding, it's based on the usage of money, or what they would call is the employment time of money. So if it's only out there for 30 days, that's all they charge you for. So really the real cost of funding is much, much cheaper, both on the short and the long term. So it's rare that anybody will have a real cost of money above prime. It will be mainly below prime. Right now, I keep a 15-year average of all my clients, and right now we're averaging about 1.94%,
Wow.
which is really inexpensive
It
money.
is.
And so there's clients I have are doing less than that. Yes, and I do have clients that are doing more than that because they're a lot smaller. But as you grow and expand, a lot of these funding companies will give you pretty decent rates. But you got to have somebody who really understands the industry and can work with you and work with the amount of clients that you have, because growing and expanding your business to me is a serious opportunity out there. So finding the right funding company is like finding the right core of stocks to be able to invest in. That's going to make you the most. And that's why you really need to have, if you're not quite sure who to look for, then that's what they need to do, is they need to contact us. And then we can take these people, because I've spent 35 years in doing my research on funding. So, there are companies out there who are specialists and specialize in funding certain industries. I have companies who specialize in funding the staffing industries, and they're the best of the best. I have companies who are good at funding manufacturers. manufacturers? How about suppliers? Suppliers of manufacturers is an altogether different animal. So I have funding companies who will do nothing but the suppliers of the manufacturing industries. The medical industry right now is going through some very, very difficult times. The insurance companies are taking forever, 45, 60 days to pay, and that causes a cash flow problem to a lot of medical physicians who
True.
need that money. Well, I have funding companies who specializes in funding the medical industry and things like that. So you name an industry, I have a specialist. It's like the medical industry all of its own. And this is what I like, is the fact is you go to a general doctor, that general doctor, what happens is he has access to specialists. He has access to the super specialists, which might be the surgeons. And so they have access to all these kinds of people. Well, in the funding industry, it's structured exactly the same way. So I have found all these people, and I know who these people are, so I can be able to do things. So there are certain industries that are very, very difficult to fund. And one of them is in construction. Construction is just one of those kinds of industries, because one of the key things in construction industry is that a construction company has to get bonding. And so if they have to get bonding, you have to put up collateral to get a bond.
So for those people that are not knowledgeable about the bonding, what does that mean? I honestly don't know what it is.
Well,
So
you have to put up a bond to protect what you're doing for that project. So if you made a mistake or something major happens, the bond covers for the mistake that you might have made.
okay.
So you have to put up a bond, and you have to collateralize the bond. So most often when you put a bond in, you have to put up collateral. And now you don't have any money for funding.
Right.
So I work with the only company in the United States that does both the bonding and the funding at the same time. And so they'll usually will waive the collateral if you need both, to make sure that you got both in place so you can take on those projects.
Perfect.
And a lot of times, a lot of these government projects, they require that. And so a lot of people, they can do one, but they can't do both. So that's why I was able to find one of these people who can do this, and they've helped a lot of my clients to get these great big $2, $3, $5, $10 million contracts, because the bonding for those contracts were extensive. But the fact is, once they had to put up the collateral, they had no money for funding. And see, my guys know how that all works, because they do
Right.
both.
Right. Right. Wow, that's amazing. So, what are other tips that you can share with our audience about, their business? What do you see for Michigan, in terms of growth?
Right now, Michigan is waiting to just bust wide open. And once again, there are certain industries. The trucking industry is another area. Michigan is known for its trucking. And so the trucking industry right now has yet to see its peak. And we're starting to see a lot of individual truckers. And a lot of individual truckers are having some cash flow issues. Even though they do the work, then they depend on getting broker deals and things like that.
Right.
But they still got to wait 30, 45 days.
Right.
And so, if you want to get into the trucking industry and you can drive, you can get DOT certified and get all the government certifications. The next big thing is the fact that you got a truck, you got everything ready to go, but then you're starting to work your business and you're finding these guys are taking forever to pay and you can't wait. Now, I do have trucking funding sources that will provide funding to the individual trucker.
Wow.
And so therefore they can operate, and all of a sudden if they decide they want to get into a second truck or a third truck, that's where asset-based financing can really be a real pleasure, because a lot of people don't understand in asset-based financing there's a concept called lease options. And under lease option financing, people don't know this, but you can lease to buy equipment and write it off twice. And sometimes we're able to help some of our clients to write off the asset 3 times.
Wow.
And that's in the law. It's in
Right.
the IRS code. We call it the Rule of 79, but it really is in Section 179 in the IRS code. And a lot of your CPAs and a lot of your business attorneys have forgotten that law. But if you understand the laws, everybody, regardless of the size of your operations, you are entitled to take advantage of these tax advantages. Even
Wow.
to the point I'm even showing businesses how you can buy another company and buy it under lease option financing. And now you can buy a company, fix it up, double the sales, triple the sales, and by the time you finally pay it off, you're going to write it off, a second time at the higher value that you originally purchased the business.
Wow.
So this is how the rich get rich, is they use the tax laws to their advantages, and even the small-time business executive can really use these laws to be able to grow and expand their business.
Wow. Wow. Well, this is really, really good information. I'm really excited, and I know that there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of questions. Anything else that you like to share with our viewers?
Well, one of the key things I tell people that, this is not a utopia society. So when you hear the word utopia, Claudia, what do you think utopia means?
I, I'm not sure.
It's
So
a perfect world, okay?
yeah.
So we really don't live in a perfect world. And so I basically sit down with business, people, and I basically tell them that there is a concept called business utopia, and it does exist today. And I define business utopia as getting your money in advance before you provide goods or services.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to get into the world of business, start thinking about business utopia first before looking for funds elsewhere, because your number one investor in your company is going to be customers. So it's not going to be you, it's not going to be somebody else. Your number one investor is customers. So you got to take your business and get to the customer base as soon as possible. And the quicker you get there, the better off you're going to be. And if you, in starting in business and you want to go through a concept called business utopia, find a way to get your money in advance before you provide goods or services. If you can't do that, then your next alternative is what I refer to as near utopia, and that's when you go into receivables. Because now you have to create receivables because people expect you to be a banker. So you're both a business person and a banker. So to be able to do that, that's where all the money is at right now. Right now, I have $6 trillion of money in my back pocket to give away for those who are in the receivable industry. And so that's an avenue that we can really help a lot of people instead of having other people holding on to your money and playing with it. I mean, would you like that, Claudia?
Of course.
You know?
And I'm sure a lot of our viewers will love that too.
Yeah, they don't want other people to hold on to their money and playing with it.
Right.
They rather have it so they can play with it and do things with it.
Exactly.
So that's what I basically tell business owners. You're too good to have other people play with your money, so you might as well have it and play with it yourself, because you probably know what's best to do with your own money instead of ABC company holding on to your money for 30, 45, or 60 days.
Correct.
So let's go ahead and do this. So they should be calling you and talking to you and saying, Claudia, how can I get into this? Because it's very easy to be able to do that, a lot easier than most people realize. It's easier than banking. It's easier than investors. And the fact is that if you have the right kinds of companies, we can easily get you into that. Even as a startup, we can show people how to go about doing that.
Right, right. And you seem to be, you are very knowledgeable. And how did you get into this business to begin with? Can you just tell us a little bit of a story?
Yeah, I got into business a long time ago when I was a kid, from having a paper route. I was 10 years of age. I had my own newspaper route, and then I just went from there. Even in high school, I had businesses in high school that I did. But, really, in essence, the best way that I really learned about business was not through college, because I did go to college, and I got to higher educations. What you really do is you're going to learn through the school of hard knocks.
Mhm.
And so I watched how other people did business. I just sat and watched everything that they did. I listened. I asked questions. And a lot of times I got the wrong answers or didn't get an answer. I
Mhm.
always used to be told that that's the way we've been doing it for 25 years. And if it's not broke, why fix it?
Right.
And I went the exact opposite way. I broke it and then refixed things.
Mm.
And I found out that the way that we've been doing it 25 years ago, times change. So this is the time to make things going. So
Mhm.
we got a hot economy
Mhm.
right now. But what I want to be able to do in America is to create a thing called the 212 economy. And a 212 is super hot. And so I want you to visualize here, Claudia, visualize water. At 211 degrees, water is just nothing but boiling hot. It just
Mhm.
bubbles and bubbles and bubbles. But if you turn it up one more degree and go to 212, boiling water now turns into steam. Steam is an energy source, and steam is so powerful it can move a locomotive. So once again, being able to have an energy source like that just by turning up the notch by 1 degree. So I always ask a lot of people, what would you rather be? Would you rather be something that's just hot, or would you want to be an energy force to be reckoned with? So that's
Mhm.
why I want to be able to show people how to become a part of the 212 economy. And so we can now be an energy force to be reckoned with, so we can be ahead of the curve and to be ahead of everybody else in the industry.
Yeah, that's amazing, and yeah, you're so right. And all this information, I'm sure, is going to be very valuable for a lot of our viewers. And now, is there any a person in particular that you look up to, that you admire, that you would like to share with the audience
Um,
in business? Or I think you have mentioned a couple of people to
well,
me.
one of my biggest heroes when I was going through my PhD, I did have the opportunity to really study a gentleman by the name of Albert Einstein. Now, Albert Einstein, as we all know, is some kind of a genius mathematician. And he took mathematics to a whole new level. And he took it to the level of business. And believe it or not, all of our beginning billionaires in America were heavily influenced by Albert Einstein. And he taught all these businesses people a very simple mathematical formula. And he told them that, here's the key to really creating wealth in America is that you don't do it all by yourself 100% of the time. What you got to be able to do is you got to find everybody and find a percent of other people to be able to help you to grow your business. And so he used mathematics, and he says if you follow a mathematical formula and get people to copy what you do, you can create wealth relatively quickly. And it works, and it's a good mathematical formula. No one has ever debunked any of his formulas. So he created the Carnegies and all of these very, very wealthy people. He got them involved in wealth, but they learned to create wealth by creating systems
Mhm.
that creates residual or reoccurring revenues. So if you want to get into business and you don't have a lot of money, I would suggest that maybe you look at some of these home-based businesses that are strictly residual or reoccurring revenues that you can create money today, and that means you're going to make money tomorrow because it's a residual base.
Right. Go ahead.
And so once again, I think those are something you might want to take a look at, and then you can learn all the nuances of business, of how to manage, how to work on sales, how to be able to service people and things like that.
Mhm.
And these
Mhm.
are all the keys of running a business, and you can do it by having a really good home-based business. And that's another thing is you need to find something that you find comfortable and compatible to your personality.
Right. Some people might not know what a residual income is. So can you just give an example of what would be like what's residual?
Yeah. Um, once again, let's take a look at the insurance industry.
Mm-hmm.
You bring someone in and you make monthly payments or quarterly payments, and a lot of these people automatically renew every year. They don't have to do much work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's reoccurring, businesses. And that's what you really want to get into. Although it's a tough industry to get into, and not only is it a tough industry, but it's very competitive, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody's out there doing it. So you got to find. I would suggest that if you're looking at a business opportunity, you got to solve problems in the world and solve problems for the United States of America. So two of the biggest problems facing America today is in finance and it is in healthcare.
Right.
So if you can find compatible businesses that has reoccurring, income in those two avenues,
Mm-hmm.
those would be avenues that I would take a look at,
Mm-hmm.
because people right now, we have a lot of people that don't have health care.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people who have health care
Mm-hmm.
that don't have good coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people who think they got good coverage, and they're
Right.
finding out by surprise they don't have it when something happens to the family.
Right.
And then when it comes to the finance, we have a debt problem in this country, and it's very severe. And so we have to solve these problems, but yet there are companies out there that solve the problems. They just have to get out there and find more people to kind of get the message out.
Right. Right. Wow. Well, it's amazing everything that we learn through you and sharing all these different options for our viewers who have that American dream of opening their own business, and now they know that there are options and there are different ways where they cannot be taken advantage by some other form of loans or some investors, but that there are other options out there for them. And I'm very honored that you took the time to be our guest at Abriendo Puertas TV con Claudia Vargas. And I'm very grateful for you to explain everything to our viewers. Is there anything else that you will like to share with our audience?
Yeah, don't be afraid to go into business. If you're looking for a great investment, look yourself in the mirror. Claudia, look yourself in the mirror and say to yourself, I'm a good investment. And so if you believe in yourself and really believe in what you can do and how you can do it, and you're not afraid to go out and seek and put your footprint in America, you're never going to have a better time. And so learn to invest in yourself. I think you might be surprised what might be your return on your investment. And so if you just put a little time into yourself and a little effort into yourself, you can possibly take $100 or a couple $100, and all of a sudden it becomes 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. You can become the next millionaire in America, but you'll never know unless you go out there and make the attempt. And you got to look for someone who's willing to mentor you. And there's a lot of people out there willing to do the mentoring. You just have to ask.
Now, there's a question what is the difference between mentor and a business coach? Because some people are kind of confused. Could you explain the difference in your own experience?
Business coaches, they just push you. If you take a look at coaches for sports and things like that, they push you to be better at what you do. A mentor will teach you all the ins and outs of being very successful in a certain specific area. So that mentor will teach you, the inside track, the outside track, what you need to do, what you can do to avoid failing. And everything else, where a coach wants you to fail so he can continue coaching and showing you, what he can do and to keep you from trying to fail,
Yeah.
realizing, and you are going to fail. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. I'm a self-made millionaire myself, and the fact is I failed. And I'm willing to admit it. I have failed. But what separated me from all those is I never gave up.
Right.
And I still fail today, but
Right.
my failures are minimal compared to what other people might experience. And a lot of people, they get themselves all into a frenzy. Oh, I failed. I didn't do this and that. And don't worry about it.
Right.
It's going to happen. You just have to get back up and start moving and keep the momentum going in your favor. But really, you got to do is just got to believe in yourself.
Right.
And right now, there's the transference of wealth is getting greater and greater for those who are willing to help themselves. So if you're a Christian, if you read the Bible, God helps those who help themselves.
Right.
Be fruitful and multiply. Once again, that really applies to the fact is helping others.
Right.
And so looking for a mentor. There's a lot of people out there who are willing to mentor you and
Right.
teach you how to be successful. And I myself mentor people to become millionaires. So those are the kinds of people I like to deal with. If you want to become a millionaire, I'll mentor you because I'll teach you not only how to get there, but it's harder to stay there. So I'll
Right.
teach you how to stay there and then how to really take it to a whole new level. And
Right.
that's where I really get the enjoyment is helping ordinary people to become very wealthy in a society that they really are entitled to be
Right.
involved into.
Right. Well, thank you so much, for Dr. Kevin, for your valuable information, for coming today for our first show of Abriendo Puertas TV con Claudia Vargas. Thank you so much for all this knowledge that you acquire and your ups and downs and your successful stories. I'm gonna put a link on our Facebook page for inquiries, to find you. And I'm honored that you were my first guest in our show. And thank you so much for empowering and giving hope and saying yes, you can. Just do it. So thank you again.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. And once again, we're here for greatness, and we're here to help people to reach greatness. And I asking people if they really have the courage and they really want to strive to go in that direction. I would highly recommend they give you a call.
Yeah.
And basically, you can kind of help guide them from what you know, and then it's a matter of if you need my help, I'll be more than glad to be a part to help you and your viewers to reach to the top.
Great, great. So you can visit us our Facebook group Abriendo Puertas TV con Claudia Vargas for more information, and we thank you again for being part of our show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.